What is the greatest fuck it, I'll do it myself in history? Canadian soldier Leo Major and his friend Willie Arsenault were scouting a Dutch town called Zwolle that had been captured by Germans in WW2. On this scouting trip, the two had decided to liberate Zwolle together but were spotted and Arsenault was killed. Major, enraged, killed 2 Germans while the rest fled. On the outskirts of the town, Major intercepted a vehicle, disarming the soldiers there. He told a French-speaking soldier that all the Canadian artillery would be firing on the town in the morning and decidedly let the Nazi free to spread the rumor, even returning his weapon as a total alpha move. That night, Major decided to single-handedly liberate the town. Arming himself with many weapons, he made explosions and noise, making it sound like the entire Canadian army was there. Several times that night, Major went back and forth from Zwolle to the Canadian base, taking 8 to 10 German prisoners each time. At one point, Major located the Gestapo, high-ranking Nazis' headquarters and raided it himself. He killed several SS officers, and the rest fled. By morning, Major discovered that the Germans who had taken Zwolle had entirely retreated. I should also mention that Major was a sniper who had only one eye from a phosphorus grenade explosion years prior and remained in the military because he insisted he only needed one eye to aim his weapon and that to him, he looked like a pirate. The Dutch town of Zwolle was liberated by a one-eyed sniper. He has several other legendary acts, but this to me was his best. Donald Knuth is one of the big names in computer science. Back in the 1960s he set out to write the definitive texts on computer programming and analysis of algorithms. The first 3 volumes came out, and he started the 4th in the early mid-1970s. He was unhappy with how the newer printing editions were typeset, and so he took a summer to solve that problem. A decade later the 4th volume still had not been completed, but as a consolation prize we got TeX, later extended to the more commonly used LaTeX, without question the most comprehensive and powerful language for creating documents with heavy technical requirements. It is a strange mix of a markup language like HTML and a compiled language like C. It is completely free and has been for well over 30 years and is probably the most bug-free piece of software I've ever seen. Certainly for its size and scope, there's not much out there of comparable quality. There is literally no mathematics that cannot be properly typeset in TeX LaTeX. Its default style is instantly recognizable to any working mathematician. It is used across nearly all STEM fields, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of journals that only accept manuscripts written in LaTeX. It wasn't until the early 2000s that drafts of the 4th volume started to appear. Nobody has seemed to mind. In 1888, Almond Brown Stroger, an undertaker, noticed he was losing a lot of business to the other undertaker in town. He found out that the other undertaker's wife was a telephone operator, and when she intercepted people asking to be connected to Stroger's funeral home, the operator would route the call to her husband's funeral home instead. 3 years later, Stroger patented the automatic teller exchange, a system which allowed telephone users to make calls without the need for human operators, single-handedly destroying an entire workforce. Probably the time Nando Parado and Roberto Canessa decided they couldn't wait around any longer and legged it for 10 days across the Andes with no warm clothes, climbing gear, or food except some scraps of their dead friends stuffed into a sock. They finally found someone out in the middle of nowhere, Sergio Catalan, who rode horseback all night and then took a bus to get some help. The mountain climbers had come from the wreckage of a crashed plane that everyone had been looking for over 2 months. They needed help for the other survivors who were injured and starving. They saved 14 of their friends. It's gotta be Imo Koivunen. He was a Finnish soldier in the Second World War when the Finns were trying to reclaim land from the Soviets. He got separated from his unit mid-war in the middle of nowhere. He was the one tasked to carry the drugs they held in case of injury or tiredness, one of which was Pervitin, which was literal meth in a tablet form. Instead of just taking 1 or 2, he downed the whole bottle and went on a weeks-long meathed-up rampage. He got hit by a landmine, evaded Soviet soldiers, caught a bird and ate it raw, all while on skis. He finally made it back to finish lines where on arrival, he weighed only 90 pounds or so and had a heart rate of 200 beats per minute. He ended up living for another 45 years. The guy who started FedEx wrote a college paper about a nationwide overnight shipping company and got a C. Started the company anyways. Later, after he started it and it was struggling, he couldn't get a loan, and the company was almost bankrupt, and he bet next week's payroll at the casino on roulette and won. Also got a Silver Star in the Vietnam War, and now co-owns the Washington Redskins, the latter often viewed as the biggest failure in his life. I'm surprised no one's mentioned Catherine the Great of Russia. She decided her husband was useless, which, granted, he was, and proceeded to set up a military coup to overthrow him. Even with the plan being discovered early, she dressed herself in military garb and marched with her new army, which had just sworn loyalty to her, down to Peter's palace, where he was forced to resign the throne, all without a single drop of bloodshed. At least until Peter turned up dead some time later under shady circumstances, but honestly, for a military coup, it was pretty non-violent. If saying "fuck it, I'm ruling Russia myself" isn't great, I dunno what is. I mean, it's right there next to her name for a reason. Not a very old story. Manjir the mountain man lived in a very remote village of India, whose route to nearby was blocked a mountain, and hence villagers had to climb it every time. And they had to do that daily to get essential supplies. During one of these trips, his wife fell down the mountain. He loved her a lot. He tried first to persuade the government to do a mountain tunnel project there, but to vain. So he went on alone to break the entire mountain with just an axe. He did that for plus 10 years and finally succeeded. There is a Bollywood movie on him, titled Manji, the Mountain Man. The giant Norse axeman who held the choke point at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. By the time the bulk of the English army had arrived, the Vikings on the west side were either slain or fleeing across the bridge. The English advance was then delayed by the need to pass through the choke point presented by the bridge itself. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle has it that a giant Norse axeman, possibly armed with a Dane axe, blocked the narrow crossing and single-handedly held up the entire English army. The story is that this axeman cut down up to 40 Englishmen and was defeated only when an English soldier floated under the bridge in a half-barrel and thrust his spear through the planks in the bridge, mortally wounding the axeman. Desmond Doss. Single-handedly saved from 50 to 100 men up on Hacksaw Ridge in Okinawa. His company was ordered to retreat when they were attacked by the Japanese, but instead he said nah, stayed up on the ridge alone, unarmed, and dragged as many soldiers as he could to safety without any help. Even when he was shot by a sniper and riddled with shrapnel, he made sure they took another guy down the hillside before him.